Good morning, Rainbow Push. I am honored to be back in your presence today. This has been quite an eventful week in Washington, D.C., in our nation's capital and around the world. To all of the veterans, I'd like to say a very special, heartfelt thank you for your service, and also let you know that we are fighting to support you. It's long time that we stopped giving lip service to our veterans and saying, thank you for your service. Our veterans deserve to be supported. No veteran should be homeless. No veteran should be without the adequate health care that they need. No veteran should internalize the wounds that cannot be healed overnight from the things that they have seen without all of the mental and physical, emotional therapy services that they deserve. Let's move beyond the simple lip service of thank you for your service. And let's go deeper to talk about the support that our veterans need. On this day, I think of my grandfathers who both served in World War II. I think of my grandfather, Charlie Henry, who was working in Greenville, South Carolina. He was working 3 jobs for one owner. And then when he did not respond to being called Charlie, he was told to come over here, boy. And he was told by that owner that I will kick you, Mr. Jackson, if you don't come here. And my grandfather, needing the job, needing the work to support his family, took off his keys while the man was trying to make a mockery of him in front of his friends and told him, you can keep your job and here are your keys. I can't say what you'll do with that leg, but I know you won't get it back and walk anymore. From there, that owner, that boss, that white man went down to the recruiting office and told them to recruit my grandfather. And that's how he got into World War II. Tried to put him on the front lines to die. Many of our soldiers in World War II, the Tuskegee Airmen, they had a symbol, victory abroad and victory at home. For those 1 million soldiers of African-American descent that fought in World War II, they were at Armistice in World War I, they were across all of D-Day and Normandy and World War II and the like. For the battles they fought abroad that they did not have the rights at home, for the liberation they had sought in Eastern Europe and France, for the same things they were not able to get at home. And when they came back home, they could not get the benefits of their fellow soldiers. I am so thankful and grateful for Rainbow Push. We need a platform to speak truth to power, Reverend Patterson, to tell our truth. Our young people and future generations need to know where we've come from, how we've gotten here, and what's ahead. As our nation inches towards another war, this could very well be the precipice of World War III. I tell you, I've heard it so many times from Reverend Donald Parsons, history does not repeat itself. People repeat history. History does not repeat itself. People repeat history. When you don't know, I would tell you what period of time does this most resemble in American history? And I would tell you it's the 19-teens, as in 1910 and beyond. This was 50 years after the end of the Civil War. There was an immigration issue. They were talking about the Irish and the Italians. Blacks had started the migration across the country. The new technology at that time wasn't social media, it was the movie theaters. We started seeing the birth of a nation where you could do a scaled, if you will, sort of messaging of racism. Then we started seeing the beginning of World War I was on its eve. All of these issues were on the battlefield at one time. Fast forward, here we are with a gunboat off the shore in the Mediterranean. Now we're saying there's provocation. The United States is having to bomb into Syria and bomb into Iraq. And God bless, we hope there is no fire return. And if a soldier gets hurt, then we're going to say they've attacked us. We're inching towards this. It's not the movie theater. Now it's the videos and the TikTok and the Facebook and the Instagram. It's the Twitter. It's all of the storyboards that's coming out. And the temperature is rising across the nation. We've heard our president ask for $100 billion to go towards Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, our border. What was the issue before in talking about immigration is now at our doorsteps again, talking about people coming in large part from Venezuela to the United States. If you give me a moment, let me just try to break out a few of these issues and make some sense for you. The persons that are coming from Venezuela, we have had an economic embargo and a sanction on Venezuela for the last 15 years. You cannot go to Venezuela and use your credit card. They have been castigated. They have been made outcasts from the world's financial system. Just 2 weeks ago, President Biden has started to take those things down, to take down some of those sanctions. And so what's happened, brother, let me finish my comment, then you talk. So then he started releasing some of them to ease the economic plight. These people that are up here sleeping on our streets, many of them children and women, they don't want to be here. They've never seen 60 degrees before in their life. 50 degrees is ice cold to them. And many of us have never slept outside in 30-degree weather. These people are sleeping outside in the cold, women and children. Our scriptures have a lot to say about how we treat the strangers, the refugees, and the immigrants. Some other minister ought to preach on that real soon. They're all around us. Our faith is being tested. This moment will pass, but let us not be unkind and cruel to those that are in need, because in one of those child's minds may very well lie the cure to cancer, to Parkinson's, to Alzheimer. Be kind to those strangers. When we talk about the government, the president asking for $100 billion. I was with my father today. He very much wanted to be here. When I think about that $100 billion, if $100 billion was directed towards the eradication, towards the cure of Parkinson's, my father could be walking right now along with many others that have Parkinson's. If we put $100 billion towards the science and the advancement of it and racing for the cure, we could eliminate Alzheimer's with $100 billion. Do you know what the United States government is spending today on Homeland Security? I'm glad you asked. It's $103 billion. That's not the Department of Defense. That's not policing around the nation. That's not for the CIA. That's not for our State Department. That's simply for Homeland Security. More than our Department of Education. I take the scriptures literally when it says study war, no more. Look at the cost that we're paying. So when I think of our veterans, I want to applaud them for all they have done, all that they do. But as your representative, I'm going to cast my vote to study war no more, so we don't have to continue to spend all of these funds on the instruments of war. They tell us in Washington, know your district. Know your district. I am so proud to represent the 1st Congressional District. I, along with just a few other colleagues, we were on the first letter that went out to ask for a ceasefire, because that's what you, the citizens of the 1st District, demand and want. I was talking at a prayer breakfast, Reverend Patterson, and I shared with them the book of Matthew, the Beatitudes, blessed are the peace makers. I said, not the peace keepers, the peace makers, not the peace keepers. The peacekeepers can come in afterwards, but someone has to have a clean heart and be willing to have dirty hands to try to reconcile people to get together. When I saw our Secretary of Defense going over to Israel, and shortly thereafter, there was a $1 billion military ship coming in behind him, I didn't feel as if we were stronger. I didn't see the ministers heading over to try to reconcile the Jewish residents and the Palestinians. I didn't see the imams coming together with the ministers. I didn't see the rabbis and the ministers and the imams coming together. That would have made me feel stronger, that people were trying to reconcile what was going to be a bloody conflict. And as the body and the death toll increases, this is where radicalization comes from. When I had to go to a funeral of a 6-year-old child that had been stabbed up by a neighbor that had been playing with him just a week before, something in that 72-year-old man's mind got radicalized and stabbed up a child and a mother. We can get into an echo and a chamber of listening to the same toxicity and turn on one another. When I shared that about the Beatitudes, blessed are the peacemakers, we were in the Senate side, and there was a rabbi over there, and he was so upset. The protocol that day was everyone says their part of their faith and what they understand it to be, and then we sit down. He had already spoken. And after I got through talking about blessed are the peacemakers, he was so incensed, he turned on his microphone and had to speak over me again. And he says, there is a time and a place for everything. There is a time for war. There's a time for peace. And he went on and on. I just simply wanted to remark to him, you're speaking about the book of law, all 39 books. I'm speaking from the 27 books about the book of love. We can fundamentally see things different. When I first started teaching at Chicago State, I had a painful encounter. There was a young man, he was a little different than the others. He was very mature for his age, on time, sat there appropriately, had his work finished, was doing well. But then when it came time for the final, I didn't see him. So I asked, where's your classmate? And one person that was friends with him came up and says, he couldn't make it today. He's in the hospital. He tried to commit suicide. I said, why? What's going on? She told me that he's a veteran. And he felt the pressure coming in on him for test taking. I said, he's a veteran? I'm 57 years of age. I'm still thinking veterans are older than me. I'm thinking you had to work in World War II and the Korean War and Vietnam. I'm not thinking that a 24-year-old young man is a veteran, that he's been to Afghanistan, that he has seen war, and he has internal wounds that have to heal. Let us pray for our veterans. When you heard the numbers of how many women, 2 million women have served in the military, our VA hospital system isn't set up to accommodate all the needs of women. Women are almost 20% and growing of our military, and we haven't made the Veterans Hospital Administration accommodate those that are fighting on the front line. For every one soldier that's on the advance, there's 5 to 7 that have to feed the supply chain. It's an enormous task to move people forward. So for all those that want to vote for war, I could be more inclined to support them if they're willing to put on the hard hat, and they're willing to put on the armor, and they want to get in the tank, and they want to lead the young people across there and then go look and drive over the IEDs and all the other weapons. Stop putting the poor and the children in front of these wars. This past week, I voted to have a ceasefire. Some of my colleagues or people that I thought I was congenial with, we've been convivial. But now that the gloves are off, and now when you say ceasefire, I'm seeing my name come up in leftist articles. I've gotten labeled a leftist when you say you want peace. That is the radical suggestion. When people said he didn't vote, my friends and brothers, I support reconciliation. I support the state of Israel. I support the state of Palestine. Palestinian children need a future. We can have a reconciled process. When I got on the Foreign Affairs Committee, I said, before I vote on things around the world that I have not seen, that I don't understand, I started getting on congressional delegations to travel the world quickly so I can make an informed decision. I first left out and went to Taiwan and Taipei to see what was happening with China and Taiwan. Then I came back and then went back to the Indo-Pacific to see South Korea, to see Thailand, to see Indonesia, to see the Philippines, to see where our bases were, to see where our soldiers have retired. I wanted to see the South China Sea, to see what China's aggression was before I cast a vote on your behalf. Then I came back in August and went to Israel with AIPAC and then went to Rwanda to take a trip so I could see what the world was doing in 2023. In conclusion, let me share with you. I went with AIPAC, the American Israel Political Action Committee group, to see. They wanted to show me. I had last been in Israel in 2013 with my father. We were trying to help rescue 2 Israeli soldiers that had been kidnapped. We went into Amman, Jordan, then over to Tel Aviv. We met with President Shimon Peres. Then we got in a minivan and went up the Damascus Road and went into Lebanon to meet with their generals, and then went to meet with Bashar Assad. So I speak from which I know. I've been to the Golan Heights. I've been to the West Bank. And just this past September, I was in the room with Prime Minister Netanyahu. I've been to the Gaza Strip 10 years ago. In this past year, in September, this past 2 months, we were like no more than 500 feet from where that wall is, where the rockets came in, and the town that we had visited is a town that got shot up by the missiles. What Hamas did was horrific, and it was an attack, and it needs to be condemned, and we stand by that 1,000%. But we have to understand that silence is not the presence of peace. Justice is the presence of peace. We have to move forward towards reconciliation of our brothers and sisters. I don't think bringing more bombs and armament will be the conclusion that we want. When we talk about the eradication of Hamas, I said, let us be clear. This was an intelligence failure. When I asked Mr. Netanyahu, I said, I have a particular issue. My Palestinian constituents are not able to freely go in to visit their family in Gaza and West Bank. We have a piece of legislation up here called the Reciprocal Visa Waiver Program. If we accept your visa and your passport, you have to accept our American passport and our visa. It's just reciprocity, nothing else to it. Meaning if you've got an American passport and you're Palestinian, you can go back to your homeland and you can come back. But no, there are checkpoints in Israel, and they don't treat our Palestinian friends with the same respect and courtesy that we've asked. I asked that to him, and he had his aides answer the question. He wouldn't touch it. Mr. Netanyahu. Mr. Netanyahu did not want to negotiate with the Palestinians, so he had a history of working and supporting Hamas. Know the history. So when we say we want to reconcile both, and now he's coming in with all these arms, and we're going to eradicate Hamas. Hamas doesn't have a standing army. They don't have a Department of Defense. It's a spirit and a group of people that have become on the disenchanted and have become terrorists in their own right. How do we create long-term peace? Well, I told him, and I've told my colleagues in D.C., not Mr. Netanyahu, but I told my colleagues in D.C., because I went to the trip with AIPAC to Jerusalem, and they shared with us before they flew us to Rwanda that the Rwandans and the Israelis have a common sort of history, if you will. The Israelis had the Holocaust and all the pain that they've had to endure. And the Rwandans have had genocide. In 1993, 1 million Rwandans were killed in 100 days. And the world turned a blind eye. When 1 million Rwandans got killed, largely with machetes, in 100 days. Then in 2003, Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo had a conflict. And they ended up with 5 million people killed. So that is the most blood-stained part of the earth in our generation that we've ever seen. But thanks be to God, to the president of Rwanda. What did they do? They used their intelligence. They have arrested and tried over 30,000 people that had committed those atrocities. Today, Rwanda is prospering. The Qatari government has invested $6 billion in private sector money into a new airport. The Rwandans are now fourth largest group of people that are sending soldiers into peacekeeping missions around the world. They sought justice by bringing people to court. Some of those persons after 30 years might have changed and they will be reintroduced back to society. So I want to thank AIPAC and my brothers and sisters who took us to Rwanda to teach us that lesson. Now when I say, repeat to them the same lesson they taught me, I'm on the wrong side of history. So if the Rwandans were never told to seek revenge, you know about President Nelson Mandela. He got his Nobel Peace Prize the same time the president of South Africa, de Klerk, his oppressor, got his Nobel Peace Prize. And they told him to reconcile the oppressed with the oppressor. I'm about to sit down. In 400 years, no one has ever told African Americans to seek revenge. I don't believe in revenge then. I don't believe in revenge now. Let us have the strength to love. Reverend Martin Luther King is not talking about an anemic strength. I'm not talking about a foolish kind of love. I'm talking about being able to look at your enemy in the eye. I'm talking about understanding where they come from. I'm talking about being able to forgive them. I'm talking about beating your plowshares into pruning hooks. I'm talking about a love that only Christ can give us the way forward. Brothers and sisters, we are on the verge of some very, very dangerous times. Death threats are coming in. I'm unafraid. And I don't want you to be afraid. To all the peace activists, keep on marching. Keep on raising your voice. We've got the power. We have to have the will. If you believe in the Lord, if you believe in God, this is a mighty good time to stand up, to show up. I was listening to the song, whatever it is, it won't let me hold my peace. We've got to have a faith where you can hold it, where you can know that God, you got to feel sometime. I wouldn't want a God that I couldn't feel sometime.